And I think we have someone on the phone.
There's an iPhone.
That's me, Joey.
Oh, hi, Joey.
Hi, Paul.
Welcome to MITSC.
Thank you.
If any of you didn't see the email, Matt has reluctantly but understandably, resigned, and the chief has named Joey Barnes as the new commissioner from Indian Township. Well, Paul, I guess it's up to you. We're live with the stream, and we do have a quorum at this point. So.
Say, do I have to call the meeting to order or what? I've never done this part. Usually John's already stepped up and taken over by the time I get in.
Yeah, I guess you just say you're calling it to order, and then we would go ahead with the introductions. You're welcome and introductions.
So first of all, I'm calling today's meeting 5/18/2021, 2:03. We have a full quorum. I'm calling the meeting to order. And of course, I'm Paul Downing. I'm the MITSC chair. So I will just, in my screen, move to my right. And if everybody could introduce themselves, starting with Richard.
Good afternoon. I'm Richard Rosen. I'm a state commissioner. I live in Bucksport.
Ezekiel. You're on mute, brother. Mute. There we go.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about that. My name is Zeke Croft McDonald. You can just call me Zeke. I'm the tribal co-commissioner for the Holton Band of Maliseets.
I'm Sam St. John. I'm the other tribal co-commissioner for the Holton Band.
Excellent. Looking at John on my screen.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is John Banks. I'm one of the Penobscot Nation representatives to MITSC, and I would like to say a welcome to Joey Barnes.
Thank you, sir.
On my screen, I have James Cody.
Good afternoon, everybody. James Cody. I'm a state commissioner from Farmington, Maine.
Next on my screen, I have Sarah.
Hello, I'm Sarah Medina. I'm a state commissioner from Dixmont, Maine.
Can I skip over the next one? It's Bert. Am I mute?
Can't skip me over. Hi, everybody. First of all, I'd like to welcome Joey Barnes. And I'm Bert Polchis, the other commissioner representing the Penobscot Nation. And good afternoon to everyone.
Sandy?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sandra Yarmel, and I am the Tribal Commissioner representing Passamaquoddy.
Next, Bob.
Hello, I'm Bob Checkaway, a state-appointed commissioner ordinarily from Freeport, although today I'm in a car somewhere between Santa Fe, New Mexico, and Dodge City, Kansas, and so far I've actually been able to break into the Zoom, which is a marvelous breakthrough to me. And welcome to new Joey Barnes.
Thank you, sir.
It was an excellent view of your ear, Bob. Thank you.
I was gonna say your ears are so clean.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Joey?
I haven't kept.
Hi, I'm Joey Barnes. I'm representing the Passamaquoddy Tribe, Indian Township, a new member.
And we have a 272 phone number.
Oh, that's me. That's my audio line.
Oh, okay.
All right.
And let me see I'll try to disconnect that. And if I
Oh no, you're fine.
Off,
It's all right. It's okay. As long as we know who it is, that's. Yeah.
And Mr. Tebow.
Paul Thibault, I'm the Managing Director of the Tribal State Commission.
I was trying to pull up, Paul, your agenda. And I don't know why my phone won't.
I can put it up if
Please.
um,
Okay.
so are you seeing it now?
Yes. So review of
So
the
Paul, the next,
agenda.
yep.
Go ahead.
Well, I mean, the next item is simply to look at the agenda and see if there are any proposed changes. I would just note that I was not able to confirm a presentation today with the fellow from the Broadband Coalition, so we will not be able to do that today.
Okay.
That is really the only that's the only change that I had to suggest.
So I have a suggestion based on a couple emails as far as connectivity issues, and Mr. Rosen, I believe, has to leave us at 3, has a hard stop. Is there any way that we can go into executive session, cover what we need, and then move into the rest of the agenda?
Well, yeah, you can if you want to do that now, or somewhere down the line in the meeting. You just have to interrupt the public stream while you do that, and then reconnect the public stream and just let people know that the stream is going to be off for as long as you're in executive session.
So I would like to do that. Go ahead, John.
I'm just gonna ask Paul if he could either put that on full screen or scroll down so we can see the rest of the agenda. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. That is the whole agenda there.
Oh, okay. Disregard my comment.
Ending with old business, executive session, yeah.
So I'll ask the rest of the commissioners, does anyone have any issue with going into executive session now, covering what we need to, and then we can have an uninterrupted remainder with the public?
Fine.
Is there anything formal we have to do, Paul, or do we just go on consensus to move that to top of the order?
I think you can just do it by consensus.
Okay.
Does anyone have any objections to doing that?
No.
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 Okay.
No.
So let's go into executive session. I'd ask that the MITSC stream be discontinued. And then Paul Thibault, if you could reassign the chair.
Yeah,
Oh.
motion and
We have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Everybody's in concurrence. Somebody needs to
Okay.
teach me these rules.
All right, I am gonna
did.
Okay. Well, we do have this live stream now, so yes, I'll
Yep.
make a motion to come out of executive session and carry on with our agenda.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to come out of executive. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So we are back live. Bob's got a big heart. I don't know what that means.
Sorry, I meant to give a thumbs up.
We love you though.
Oh, I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
So can you bring up the agenda?
Sure. Hold on. Okay, you see it now?
Yes.
So if you're out of executive session, the next item is review approval of minutes. That would be the minutes I sent for April 7th. And I sent you all a note that I didn't have April 21 completed because I wasn't present at the tail end of it. But I noted that there were only a couple of sort of procedural motions during that. But I would get those minutes for the next meeting. But you do have the April 7th minutes to look at.
I move we approve the April 7th minutes as presented.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Bert. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 That's unanimous, so no dissension.
Okay. Then we'll go on to the next item, Paul.
So we would then go into the financial report.
Yes, and I'd start by saying I did not draft a written managing director report that incorporates a narrative financial report. It hasn't been that long since the last meeting, and I didn't prepare a managing director report. But for I'll just give you a financial report. I sent you the three, the usual monthly financial reports. Nothing really remarkable, I think, in any of those, but I'm glad to answer any questions anyone might have arising from them. And I wanted to note a couple of things. It does look, if you look at the balance sheet and the year-to-date report, it appears that we continue to be on track to have our carryover at the end of this fiscal year, which is June 30th, of somewhere between $90,000 and $100,000, which is pretty much what we've been projecting for a while. So that's basically, it means the carryover from last year is gone, and part of the funding for the current fiscal year will have been used, but we will still have some carryover left. So the other item I specifically wanted to mention is that MITSC is in the governor's change package for the biennial budget for the next 2 years. And I conferred with Richard on this, and I appreciate his help on the question of the change package. And also, I plan to submit testimony to the Appropriations Committee on Thursday. They're having a hearing on the change package. That'll be written testimony. I won't be doing verbal testimony after conferring with Richard, and I appreciate his help on this. it doesn't seem necessary that I do verbal testimony, but I will submit written testimony. And, being in the governor's package, I understand is good news. It means it's, we have a good chance of actually getting that money. And this is the amount of money that the Judiciary Committee had decided to recommend. I think that was in January it might have been February when I appeared before Judiciary. So if approved, it would mean an additional $55,200 for each of the 2 years of the next biennium. And that number basically was arrived at based on what it looked like it would cost to have an additional employee at 60% time. So if that materializes, it's a substantial bump, almost 50%, in our state appropriation for those next 2 years. So we'll definitely have some things to talk about in terms of what we can do with that money if that materializes. So,
Outstanding.
and I don't know enough about the legislature. Maybe Richard or James can tell me as to when we might actually think we'd know the answer to that. So I'd invite Richard or James to give an opinion about when they think we might really know whether or not that's happening for us.
Richard, do you want to go, or you want me to take a stab at it?
I think you'll have a better sense of when they'll have an answer. I guess the only thing I would include is that from a process perspective, typically a change package like this would have been scheduled, public hearings would have been scheduled, for one like this, probably 5, maybe 6 days, committees in and out. This legislature has announced that they're going to conduct the public hearing in 1 day. So Thursday will be the day. That's unusual, and that's perhaps an indication of the time track that they're on. So James may have a better read after that.
Yeah, it's not scientific. I did have a good discussion with Solomon Millett, who's the ranking House Republican on the Appropriations Committee on Friday. He indicated to me that folks are getting pretty anxious to get out of the building or out of the Zoom environment at this point, and that things would likely begin to move fairly rapidly as of next week. So I would think, there's no science to this, but I would think within the next 2 weeks, we'll have a pretty darn good sense as to whether we're in or we're out. And given the magnitude of some of the money flowing into the state's coffers, I feel like I would agree with others that we stand a pretty good shot of being included.
Well,
Thank you for that.
I think John Banks has a question.
Go ahead, John.
Paul Tebow, is there any basis for that amount of funding that the state decided to fund MITSC to 55,000? Is that a reflection of something that we've submitted?
Yeah.
Submitted in the past, or where'd that number come from?
It's a modified version of something that we submitted. When I spoke to the Judiciary Committee back in the winter, I had a different number. It's a little bit bigger. But in the middle of the Judiciary hearing, they did some math and they came back with, how about 55 too? And I said, well, okay. And they were going to make it for 1 year. I argued that an increase for 1 year didn't really give us, the time we needed to, if we're going to make a decision about adding staff. It was just too disjointed to have a 1 year bump of that amount. And they then decided to make the recommendation for both years. So that's how it all happened.
So just a quick follow-up. So we do have somewhat of a budget that we've prepared previously for the use of this 55,000?
Well, the proposal was basically that it would enable us to have a second staff member. That's basically what it is.
Yeah.
there was some back and forth on how much of that it would really cost and could we use some of the carryover for that? But that's where it came out. So, any other questions for me on the financial report? Paul,
Don't see any, no hands. I don't know what I did, but now I've just got a one small strip. I don't have everybody in there. I don't see any hands up. Bert, do you have a hand up?
No,
Okay.
not yet.
and I can stop sharing now if people don't still need the agenda up.
I think we're good.
Okay. Then we'll have the full screen. I assume you got everybody back now?
Yeah. Only one that was missing was you.
So, Paul, you ready to move on to old business?
Absolutely.
Okay. The first item on old business is just basically, update on where we are with, the bill to amend the Implementing Act, LD 1626, and any other comments, that commissioners may have at this point on that. I haven't gotten any particular, news since the last time we spoke about this, I guess. Well, not everybody was in on the last call we had where we didn't, actually have a formal meeting. So there are some members of the commission who weren't actually on that call. I think Sarah is one for sure. So I assume at this point that everybody's up. Everybody knows that the big bill 1626 did come out.
Right.
And it was scheduled for very quickly for a public hearing, but things evolved very quickly and the decision was made to hold over that bill until the January session. They did go ahead and have I guess I would call it a truncated, public hearing I think that was on May 4th, but they also said that they're having another public hearing on it, in the next session. So I was going to submit what we were characterizing as placeholder testimony, but after the news on the holdover, rather than throwing that together, after talking with committee staff, I did not submit the placeholder testimony because it had become clear that the opportunity would be there down the line for MITSC to, have further discussion about the bill and then to submit what would be, MITSC's actual position regarding the bill. So that's where that stands.
Paul, has anybody figured out why the bill was carried over?
Well, James, I don't have the answer on that, except I don't really. I think that my understanding was that the tribes in the Wabanaki Alliance had, came to that conclusion, but that it was best to do that. But I would defer to tribal commissioners who may have more information about how that decision was actually reached. But I think, Bert, you got something?
Well, I don't have anything as far as how that decision was made, but I do have something to say. And since we're on the topic of this LD, and I don't. There's times here where I've felt that we have been dragging our feet in regard to when we were talking about endorsing the passage of this bill. The feeling that I've gotten, basically, whether it's intentional or not. It seems as though some of the discussion that we've had has been more in line with basically stalling, and I would hope that's not the case. But this bill, this was our tribal leaders and legislators, of the state of Maine that came up with this bill. And where was the foundation of of what they came up with to formulate this bill? That came from us, from all of these recommendations throughout the years of MITSC. Living up to our responsibility to make the recommendations, to better the relations between the tribal nations and the state of Maine. So now here we are. We have a bill in front of us. It's not by any means perfect, but it is a bill that was formulated and constructed by our tribal leaders and those legislators representing the state of Maine. So it would be kind of ridiculous, and for us to even think that we would, there's a chance that we might totally disregard all of our recommendations and not endorse it. So I think sometimes, like I said, I've heard a couple of our fellow commissioners, want to go piece by piece, just make discussion piece by piece, bit by bit of this bill, when we don't need to. Those things were already discussed by our tribal leaders and those legislators. Now here we have a bill that's put together with an agreement made, some understanding, something to bring forth better relations between the tribal nations and the state. And yet, there has been discussion within our own commission whether, what are we going to do? What are we going to support? How, well, again, all those recommendations that we made are in this bill, and they agreed to put it into this bill. So at this time, and I'm going to make the motion right now. Now, how we take this motion and when we're going to deal with it, heck, we can always do a up or down vote right now, or we can take it. And I know the next meeting that we have is solely focused on discussion on our endorsement of this bill, so we can use that time to decide how we're going to word it. But I am going to make this motion, and I'm going to make it right now, that MITSC will endorse the approval of this bill. Will you?
I would second that motion for the reasons that Bert explained, which is that I've been on MITSC the longest here. I've been on it since 1987. And every time we've looked at the problems between the tribe and the state in interpreting different pieces of the Maine Implementing Act, we've always arrived at the same place. We provided all of the foundation for the task force report through the work that we've done over the years. And let's not forget that this particular bill originated from the state, from the legislative leadership. It was Senator Troy Jackson and Representative Sarah Gideon that kicked this thing off with the goal of bringing the Maine tribes into parity with the rest of the federally recognized tribes. And As I said in my written testimony supporting this bill, the tribes are ready, willing, and able to take on these additional governmental responsibilities that are embodied in this bill. The tribes have grown a lot since 1980. We've developed since 1977, actually, before the Settlement Act, when we got federal recognition, we started developing governmental service programs. And we have the full set, tribes have the full set of governmental services that every municipality and every other local unit of government has. And we're ready. It's time to modernize this thing. You know, the recommendations in 1626 all originated with MITSC's foundational work. And as Bert said, and I agree with him, it would be crazy to not support this at this time. It's what everything MITSC's been working toward. Thank you.
I see Sarah's hand up.
If we were voting to support the concept, I would vote in favor of it. I understand everybody's frustration, and I know that this is based on a lot of work over a lot of years. But because the legislature held it back, there's a chance that there may be some tweaks or some changes. And I would prefer to wait to vote on the actual LD, not to vote in favor of something that we think we know what's going to be in it. So that's the reason that I would not vote in favor of this today. It's not because I'm opposed to it. I just think that where it's been put till next year, that we should wait.
Go ahead, Bert.
The thing, there's a problem with that. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, Sarah, but at the same time, I also look at the fact that, you know, if there's any changes to this bill, those changes are going to have to go through our tribal leadership, okay, through each of the tribal nations. So, you know, again, it comes down to the fact that all this stuff that's in this bill basically come from you know, like John said, foundational work of MITSC. All these studies, all these reports that we've done, all the suggestions, all these things, recommendations that we made, they're all incorporated in their decisions in this. And so for us to wait, you know, we can, you know, and this is where sometimes I get the feeling that some of our state colleagues here kind of stall out what we're trying to do because, you know, first of all, and I stated it before, is that what happens with this the Settlement Act, the main implementing act, whether it's changed or not, it does not affect any of you, any of the state. But what it does affect 100% is every member of our tribal nations here in this state. So when we're talking about something that's been happening all year in, year out. And so, you know, the fact that it affects us, of course, we're going to be focused on getting those changes. You know, whatever changes are going to go to the positive is still better than what it's been. So I think, you know, I made my motion and it's been seconded. Now, how we go about discussion and making that vote, how we're going to word, you know, our endorsement, you know, that's the discussion that can be made, you know, later. But, you know, the thing is we cannot wait. Just because they've decided to hold it until the next session, you know, doesn't mean that we actually have time to drag our feet on this. What we should be doing is making sure that we have our ducks in a row, that we're doing what we need to do to better the tribal state relations, to better the well-being of each and every one of our tribal communities. And when I'm speaking, I know I've been appointed by the Penobscot Nation, but they, my chief, the vice chief at the time, and I know my fellow Penobscot commissioner had explained to me the reason why they felt the need for me to be on this commission, because I can't stand dealing with politicians in the first place. But because of my responsibility to our Wabanaki people as a whole, not just the Penobscot, not just the Passamaquoddy, Maliseet, Micmac, but when I talk about my people, I'm not talking about the two-leggeds only. I'm talking about the land, the water, everything that's a part of Wabanaki, this whole area, my relatives, my blood. So what happens for the good of our people also benefits the land and its resources. So, we can't drag our feet.
Paul first and then Sarah. Go ahead, Paul.
Apologize, Sarah, but
No, go.
I was asked to restate Bert's motion. And Bert's motion is that MITSC will endorse approval of LD 1626. That's the omnibus bill. That
Okay.
was the motion.
Go ahead, Sarah.
I understand how important this is to Bert and all Wabanaki people. And I think that the legislators of the state understand the tribe's positions on this. I do think that there is a little reluctance still on the part of the state, the governor, some people to pass this bill. I've never voted for something before I really knew what it was, and would choose not to today. I think probably when it comes down to it, there's a lot of things in that bill that I will absolutely support. There may be a few things that I do not support, but might be willing to go along with for the sake of the greater good. I don't really know how that bill's going to turn out yet. But one thing I really don't want to see happen is MITSC take a public vote today that has the potential, I may be the only one, but has the potential of putting the tribal representatives on, one side of an issue and state representatives on another. I don't think that sends a good message of, of cooperation. And I think that when we come to a point where we all understand exactly what we're voting on, and maybe that will include looking at some things a little bit differently than the bill does now, then I will be more comfortable voting.
Okay, so James, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a quick note here. Outside of the substance of this policy discussion, I thought we had decided at the last meeting that we were going to take some time to look at the actual language, and that there were other commissioners that that are not on the line today that wanted to be part of that dialogue, and that we would have a predictable meeting schedule going forward whereby people could be available to participate in this discussion. And that doesn't seem to be the case right now. I am sure Commissioner Hancock, I'm sure Commissioner Cashwell would like to be party to these discussions. And the idea that a motion would be on the agenda today to endorse that legislation was not available to them. And so for only that reason, I will vote against this motion so that we can have a collective discussion in the spirit of collaboration in the longer term.
Okay, so before I jump to Bert, me as the chair, the one thing I wanted to say is the legislation has their role as lawmakers. Based on everything that I've seen, the recommendations that this body made were unanimous in endorsing the omnibus bill last year. Everybody voted in favor of it. I see a head shake. Go ahead, James.
No, I have never voted to endorse the entire piece of legislation. And that has been my rationale for asking for an explanation of the provisions in it for months now.
Okay, so go ahead, Paul. You're on mute.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment and follow up on James's comment. Yes, MITSC has not taken a vote, taken a formal position on the prior bill, or even as such on the task force recommendations. We've discussed at various points, possibly MITSC taking a position first on the task force recommendations, but in all honesty, there has been no formal position taken by MITSC with respect to either the task force recommendations or 2094 that was submitted last year.
Okay, so I stand corrected on that. Bert, you had your hand up.
All right, if you remember when I started to make this motion, I mentioned we can either do an up and down vote, or we can move to the next meeting. The motion will be in place. The second is in place, but next meeting we can discuss how we're going to handle this. That meeting is primarily focused on that, but I want to make sure that is all we discuss for that meeting, because that's what it was supposed to be. So that's where I'm at with my motion, and I'm sure John, he can mention whether or not he stands right on his second with that, and we can move on to the next agenda. And this motion will come back forth in place for our next meeting. We have more discussion with the other commissioners on hand.
So are you moving to table your motion?
Till the next meeting, yes.
All right, now I'm in a quandary, Paul Tebow.
Well, I mean, Bert made the motion and now he's moved to table it. If there's a second to that, I think you then vote on tabling the motion till the June meeting.
Okay. Do I have a second on tabling it?
Second.
All right, Mr. Hancock has seconded the motion to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I even got a thumbs up from Sandy. So the motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to go on record as opposing the motion to table. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
So noted. John Banks, Penobscot Nation tribal representative to the MITSC, has formally stated he is in opposition to tabling the motion.
So next agenda item. Paul?
Yes.
So the next agenda item is planning and scheduling the meetings for the balance of 2021. The background on this is that at the prior meeting, the commission voted to have three more regular meetings this year in June, September, and November. You didn't set a day of the month or time. That's what you would need to determine today. And I believe there was a consensus that because there would be just three regular meetings for the balance of the year, that they would be 3-hour meetings.
Yeah.
I think background.
That's what I understood.
So what you need to figure out now is how maybe there's a recurring day of the month and time that you could set for all three of those meetings. If not, you need to set them, you know, one at a time.
So I think I actually sent an email out on this hold on just a second, Bart. I sent the email, which was a forward from James, which I think was a very good offer. And as he stated in his email, he was not absolutely married to it. But I think it was at least a good basis to say, yeah, these are the things that we need to cover. And, you know, once this house cleaning meeting is off the books, then let's focus on that. And I think James actually put that in the email, that the next meeting would be specific to the current LD that's being discussed. Go ahead, Bert.
You know, I stated, you know, I believe, you know, that meeting we had, I guess it was an unofficial meeting, but I still have a problem with having these short meetings. You know, with the work that we need to do, the agenda items, you know, the list of agenda items doesn't seem to get shorter. They get longer because we keep on having to take things that we can't take care of out of these 2-hour meetings. You know, when we met before, and I grant, you know, yeah, it was in person. Sometimes we began our meetings at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock and went to 3 to 4 or 4 o'clock. And even then, sometimes we didn't get through our full agenda, and then we had to move on. You know, now we have the same size of an agenda, trying to squeeze it into 2 hours, and you know, adding another hour for 3 hours, you know, to give us a 3-hour meeting. That's movement in the right direction, but I still don't think that it's enough. We have a lot of work to do, and like I said, you know, maybe it might not matter to some people, but I know for a fact that it matters to the tribal nations, the issues that we deal with. So, you know, you know, I think we wound up doing these 2-hour meetings, which I don't really care for, because we have a lot of things of importance that we need to take care of. And yet, you know, I think, you know, we need to go back to you know, a full day full of meeting. And you know, the way I look at it is, we are all appointed onto this commission for a reason, and we've all accepted our appointments to this commission for a reason. That means, you know, we have accepted our appointments to this commission to do the work that this commission, you know, entails. So, you know, going back, you know, we might, maybe in the next meeting we can go 3 hours, you know, because it's only focused on one particular agenda item. And I don't have a problem with that. But you're talking about having these meetings scheduled at certain intervals, and only a couple hours or 3 hours at a time. That's not gonna work. So I still would push to get our regular length of meeting back into place, whether it's in person or on this Zoom or a hybrid of such. But we really need to rethink this whole thing about these short meetings.
Paul Tebow.
No,
Oh, I thought you had something to say. My apologies. So I think I included that in the email today that I sent to everybody. The suggestion was made that if we're going to have a meeting, 3 hours in duration, then one thing in 2021 or 2020, our time investment was a lot less than in normal years. I wasn't part of this in 2019. I attended a couple of the MITSC meetings as a council member. But I agree with Bert. I mean, I remember going to the one at Point Lookout. That was 2 days. I'm sorry, 2 days of meetings. We were investing a lot of time into the product and the process. So I think having a 3-hour meeting is reasonable in June. I think that we can come up with an agreed upon when we will convene again. Maybe not having the exact time, but I got to concur with Bert. We have a lot of work, or at least my perception is there's a lot of work that needs to be done. So I would propose that June meeting be a 3-hour meeting, and I propose it be a hybrid. That some people, like me, I have got no problems with attending a person face-to-face meeting. I'm in one right now. So I guess I'll leave it to the commission and your desires to whether to have a face-to-face and a 3-hour meeting in June.
Kevin's got a comment.
Go ahead, Kevin, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you for that, Paul. I agree. I think by June, pretty much anybody that wants to be vaccinated is gonna be. And I don't see why that couldn't be at least a hybrid meeting as you suggested. So I just wanted to say, I think trying to get back to in person for those who are comfortable is a good idea. And June's an important topic, and it would be good to do that as face-to-face as possible.
Yes, and we'll bring boxing gloves because it could get physical. You never know. Go ahead, Paul.
I just had a question to follow up on that, and it's a question for Bert and John Banks. I don't know the current circumstances at Penobscot, but is there any chance that a hybrid meeting could be the in-person portion of that could be at the Penobscot?
Yeah, there's a real good chance that that could happen. I understand that they're talking about reopening the offices right after Memorial Day weekend. Some degree. I don't know if it will be a full, complete 100% reopening, but I'm sure that we could make arrangements to use the conference room.
I would just add that, I mean, in the past, Penobscot has proven to be a convenient location, for meetings. I mean, we have gone to the other tribes as well, but because of its location, if this is gonna be the first, at least partially in-person meeting, I think it would be great if it could be there.
Go ahead, Zeke.
So I just want to remind everyone that I'm in Canada, and getting over the border is no small thing. But I do think this is it's a good idea. I think we should get back to in person as soon as we can, despite the fact that I'm gonna have to stay virtual. Yeah.
So we could meet in Calais and holler across the bridge at you. So I think that Penobscot's offer, if we can confirm that with the chief, that we could meet there, John, I think that would be excellent. And as long as the space has the ability to do Zoom, Paul has become a master at it, so he can set it all up.
We do have the portable equipment to do it.
We have, I think we have the ability to do that. We have an IT person, and I know I've conducted some interviews for some personnel things on the big screen in the conference.
Thank you, John.
Do we have a date for that meeting?
No.
I thought there was 2 different suggested dates, and for some reason the 18th of June, the 3rd week in June was mentioned that I remember. But that's the only one that I can remember. Maybe it's not the 18th. Hold on. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I remember hearing June 18th, but that's the only date that I've got on my phone that looks open. And maybe that's what it was for me.
Well, today's the 18th. If we did it on the 18th, that's a Friday. It works for me. If it's a 3-hour meeting, maybe we could work around something else that you have, Paul, the first of the following week, or I don't know.
So Can we look at the 18th and the 21st as the two potential dates, and then Paul do the doodle poll, ironing it out?
Yeah, we can go that route. I gather from the conversation, you're not going to try to set a recurring date and time for the next 3 meetings.
I would like us to do that. I'd like us to say it's going to be the X day of the first week of the X quarter type thing, so that we always know when it's going to be.
Well, you have already voted to have meetings in June, September, and November.
Right.
So those are months that you decided on.
Which is good. So if we could set it on the third Tuesday of the month or the second Wednesday of the month or whatever seems to work for people, I think that would be a great way to do it. But
Well, maybe we can do June right now. The only thing I'd say about the 18th and the 21st, they both would work for me. That is Father's Day weekend. Anybody's got people traveling. So we were going to meet on the 18th. If possible, I'd rather do that on the morning side on the 18th.
good point.
Could we do, I'm just throwing this out there. Don't don't push back too hard. I'm just trying to make it simple. Could we do I think we used to do Wednesdays, if I remember correctly. Could
Yes.
could we do the third Wednesday of June, September, and November from 9 to noon?
So that's the 23rd in June.
No, it's the 16th. For the third Wednesday is the 16th of June.
Oh, I missed that one. Yep, 16th.
I would prefer the 16th myself.
Yeah,
Works good for me.
and then that's the 15th of September.
Yep.
And then what, November?
It would be the
17th.
November.
Yeah. I can do all 3 of those.
Yeah, I can too.
You guys conspired, Kevin, to get this on a Wednesday. You, James, Sarah.
Well, maybe it's because we know forest products industry meetings tend to be on other days, and this is the one we're free. I don't know, but there was no conspiracy, believe me.
Go ahead, Paul.
Well, James's point was a good one, that for a long time, Wednesdays were the meeting days. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was something that we were doing for quite some time. It seemed to be it seemed to work for us for the most part. There were times when we had to reschedule it, but for the most part, that third weekend or third Wednesday of each month wound up being the best time for everyone to schedule around.
So if somebody would make a motion from this point forward, MITSC meetings would be on the third Wednesday of any given month, that we have a MITSC meeting moving forward. We can create tradition today.
I would make the motion that MITSC meetings, I'll be a little bit more specific than that. I'll make the motion that MITSC meetings for the remainder of the year occur on the third Wednesday of June, September, and November from 9 a.m. until 12 noon. And that for the remainder of the year, just because I think some people are going to have various dynamics going on in addition to the end of this pandemic, that they be hybrid, or at least allow the opportunity for people to Zoom in.
Do I have a second? Kevin seconds the motion. Go ahead, Bert.
I'm still at odds with them short meetings. I think next month or the next meeting we have could be three hours, but to limit it for the rest of the time, I would oppose that, because I really think that we have too much work to just stick with 2 or 3 hour meetings. So I would agree with going back to our full meetings.
Sarah?
I'm wondering if we could set this schedule and then see how well we can do with a 3-hour meeting that's in person and hybrid. I mean, a hybrid next time. If we have an agenda that's pretty tight, we may be surprised at how much we can accomplish in 3 hours. And then if we need to extend a future meeting, or if we have a presentation or a particular topic or whatever, we can modify it for that meeting.
Good points. Any other discussion items? Go ahead, Paul.
I guess I'm just inquiring whether we should treat Sarah's comment there as basically a proposed amendment to the motion.
I wouldn't. Well, I would just leave it out there. Let's set these 3 meetings. We've got the dates, we've got the 3 hours. If after the next meeting, we think we need to go beyond that, deal with it then. That's what I'd do.
I don't see any other hands. So we've had a motion. We've had 3 very specific third Wednesdays of June, September, November identified. We have a specific time identified. We've had the motion, the second, had the discussion. Now put it to a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm gonna throw a big heart up.
Aye.
Bob, give me a big heart. I think he loves me. And I believe that carried unanimously, Paul, so we didn't have to ask for dissension.
That's my understanding.
So next agenda item?
Next agenda item.
Oh, motion carried, sorry.
Oh, sorry. I believe Jeremy Willett is on the Zoom at this point, available to speak with the commissioners on the next agenda item, which is the Wolfton Mining Project. So there is Jeremy. So Jeremy, as we discussed, we're asking you to make some brief comments and then be available for any questions from the commissioners.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Listen, I really appreciate taking the time out of your busy meetings to kind of hear me out. I've got a quick presentation, if that's okay with everybody, and I'm just going to share that now. Am I able to get control to share my screen?
Paul would have to make you a co-host.
Oh, I'll go ahead.
There we go.
Paul's getting good at this now. He's a master.
I told you.
Now, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so introductions. My name is Jeremy Willett. I'm the Vice President of Project Development with Wolfton Resources. If anybody hasn't heard of us, we are a Canadian junior mining company. We have an asset or a project located roughly 9 miles north of Patten, Maine. It's just a quick disclaimer site. The location of the project is, as I said, it's about 9 miles north of Patten, and it's about 5 miles, from Route 11 into the woods via logging roads. So there is a project site that's proposed currently with the Land Use Planning Commission. It's a 528 acre proposal out of the 7,000 acre land parcel that Wolfton owns in that area. So this is the rough layout of the project. So at this point, we've submitted a proposal or a petition with the Land Use Planning Commission with this sort of detail on there. So basically, what we're proposing is a mining property. It's a small underground mining property searching for zinc and lead and copper, silver, gold. Associated with that property is a small series of tunnels that go underground, and then also a concentration facility, water treatment facilities, and then dry stack tailing storage, fully confined dry stack tailing storage. As far as time frame, As I mentioned earlier, we're currently in the rezoning process with the Land Use Planning Commission in Maine. That was scheduled to be roughly a year-long process. We're kind of in a year and a half right now, so we're expecting it to be about 2 years total before any final decisions are made. If there's a positive decision made on rezoning of that 528 acres, then we'll be moving into a permitting phase, which is a full detailed baseline evaluation, working in conjunction with the DEP, and then applying for a mining permit based off the results of those. Through each one of those steps, or through each of those 3 steps, there is full community and public consultation through the Land Use Planning Commission and the DEP. So after everything theoretically is approved, then we move into a 1.5-year construction phase, and then a 10-year operating phase of the mining project, through which we're continuously reclaiming the property and remediating the property at the same time. By sort of closing down, so I mentioned the tailings facility, by closing down that tailings facility as we go. So this is just a general view of what the opening would look like. That's a half-ton truck kind of driving into an example portal. The method used is, as I mentioned earlier, it's a strict underground method. So access is via tunnels to underground. There's no open pits. There's nothing large about this project. After the material is brought to surface and it's concentrated, this is an example of a concentrator located in Alaska. So basically the process goes, we pull the material up to surface, we crush it, and then grind it down to a fine powder. Then we mix it with baths, and we separate the valuable minerals from the gangue material, and then we dewater everything. And then the valuable material, which is the metal, gets sold, and then the non-valuable material, which is tailings, they get deposited onto the tailings facility. The tailings facility is a fully lined, robustly lined facility with 2 to 3 feet of compacted tiller clay, and then a thick, high-density polyethylene or rubber liner. And then on top of that, there's a leachate collection layer. So if there is any moisture that comes in contact with the tailings, or if there's any rain, it's all collected through operations, and then it's sent back into the concentrator for process water. So these are just a couple of photos or images of well, one's Greens Creek in Alaska and one's Silvertip in the Yukon, of where these facilities are working. So, one of the big questions is around water. So basically the water balance out there today is around 52 gallons a minute land from precipitation onto, the theoretical impact areas of the project. During operations, we would end up adding about 17 gallons per minute to that. And that's strictly from, seepage collection underground. So combine those two together, then we would treat them through a state-of-the-art water treatment facility, which has 3 stages: chemical, and then 2 mechanical treatment systems, and then discharge via ground diffusers, basically septic fields, into the groundwater again. So this is an example of where that's taken place. So this is just across the border in New Brunswick, and this is really a mechanical discharge structure. It's a septic bed, basically. So through this process with the Land Use Planning Commission, they've been very diligent. I don't have a lot of time, so I won't go through everything in detail, but the project in general very minimally impacts, all considerations related to the project and related to the area. From an economic perspective, though, the project over its duration is going to hire, 100 plus employees. We just redid some evaluation. We're going to be sitting at about 130 employees. These are pretty high paying jobs as well, upwards to 6 figures on average. And the outreach for the project is easily within an 1.5 hour drive. So, we're looking at, the nations and communities that have an 1.5 hour radius around the project, which I think is substantial. Also the supplies, rendered services, consulting, et cetera, and then fuels, energies, and taxes. ultimately the project is looking to spend about $630 million in order to mine, the product that we're trying to mine, zinc primarily. Add taxes to that, and the benefits to Maine are around $500 million. That's over a 10-year project. I think what's important to note too, and I'll speak to it a little bit further, is the training that'll come out of a project like this. Now, obviously, mining isn't really a skill set that exists in Maine because it's two generations past. However, pending our ability to come in and operate a project like this, a significant training program would be established. We've been in communications with community college already in the areas, and we already have established, because we've done this training previously in New Brunswick, we've established basically a syllabus or a program associated to it. And what's really fun about it is, okay, so now we take the skill sets that exist in Maine, logging skill sets, et cetera, mechanical skill sets, and we train those folks into the environment that they're going to be working, because that's really what's specialized about a project is the environment that you're working in. So assuming that we hire 100 people, which wouldn't all end up happening in year 1, but certainly by year 3 we would plan to have a much more complete complement of Mainers from all tribes and all communities within the north. Add to that, a series of turnover, continued training. We're looking at training, over the life of the project, roughly 250 employees.
Jeremy, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we're going to need you, because of the timeline, we're going to need you to wrap up and be available for questions.
Absolutely.
If there's more, I can circulate. If you send me, the slides, whatever, I can send those around.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the timing is pretty good. That was my last slide. I guess I just want to close out by, and I'll pull the, oops, I wonder if I can, there we go. Yeah, I guess I just want to close out by saying, obviously mining is important. Every one of us around the table is using materials. In addition to that, we know that, the legislation that's generated by the DEP, the Chapter 200, is the best in the country. So, my opinion of it is that, we really need to look at mining in Maine as the cleanest, most responsible way to generate resources, which are used to do, used to generate all of the technologies that we know and love today, giving us the ability to communicate with each other today, as well as, support a fossil fuel reduction based on needing those minerals in order to generate, electric cars and all the good technologies that are involved. I guess I'll cut it off there because I know time is short. But please, if there's any questions, I'm happy to have the discussion now, or if you want to reach out, I'm happy to have this discussion with anybody independently or as another group also. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeremy. And could you take down your slides so that we can have everybody back up on screen?
Sure can. I think so. Maybe I just have to close it.
There, we're back now.
Yeah, did that work? Okay.
Yeah. Thanks. So Paul, back to you, but I think now would be the time for any questions folks have for Jeremy. You're muted, Paul. Paul, you're on mute.
How about now?
Yep.
All right. Does anyone have any questions for Jeremy at this time? Go ahead, John.
Hi, Jeremy. Thanks for the presentation. I'm John Banks. I'm one of the Penobscot Nations commissioners on the Maine Indian Tribal State Commission here. And if you could just take a minute to kind of describe the history or the experience that Wolfton has in running these kinds of operations. You showed some pictures of some projects in Alaska and Yukon, and I was wondering if any of those are Wolfton projects or not. And you mentioned the elaborate water treatment system, which I'm very curious about. Has your company ever been able to employ a system like that? I did look at parts of the application where, because I'm concerned with the impacts on the water resources.
Of course.
And, there was some discussion about discharging the water back to the groundwater at natural background levels or without any impacts. And I'm wondering if you've ever been able to do that at other facilities that Wolfton might have operated. So I guess the first question is, has Wolfton operated a mine in the past?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Banks. All very good questions and completely reasonable. I guess first and foremost, Wolfton is a junior explorer. So by definition, we haven't operated as a company any of its own properties. This will be the first and the keystone operation for the property, or for the company. Sorry. With that being said, though, it's really about the team that's involved more than the nameplate on the company. So when you consider the team that's involved, myself included, I've been involved with several mining operations, most of which are very neighboring of Maine. So there's been the Half Mile property in New Brunswick. Again, the Caribou. Half Mile was a greenfield project, similar to how the Picket Mountain project would go, except for Half Mile doesn't have a concentrator and tailings facility. Now, Caribou, for example, that was a brownfield project, and when I went in there with my experience with that project was, okay, we got this brownfield project, which actually was a significant environmental liability, and we were able to go in there with revenues and clean up a lot of the liabilities that were existing there. And we went in there with a really significant environmental strategy in mind. Now, other operators within the company, so Ron Little's the president and CEO, he has tremendous experience designing and building mining properties. His most recent was in Western Africa, which is a significant GDP contributor, and they're doing things safely and cleanly. Moving forward, obviously our board of directors, I won't go through, everybody in detail, but they're all posted on our website, and we do have a plethora of experience starting, operating responsible projects, and that's ultimately why we built the team that we did, is because of the experience that comes to the table for a fresh company like Wolfton. Moving to the water treatment, it's obviously a significant concern, not just for you, for everybody in the state. The DEP regulations, the Chapter 200 regulations, dictate very clearly that we are unable, as an operator or as a designer or as an explorer, to contaminate Class A waters, which is what is adjacent to the project. So we are, by rule, not able to discharge water that is going to be able to degrade both volumetrically or qualitatively the water that's receiving it. We're also not allowed to discharge directly into any surface receiving bodies. It is by legislation that we have to discharge water into back into the ground, receiving ground surrounding the project. As far as treating to a state of of high quality, which is background or better. We have guaranteed commitments from a company called Suez. They're a global company. They operate worldwide. They have found some examples, one specifically that has similar type of process water that we would be expecting to come out of our tailings facility. They've treated that water. They've met guidelines, not specifically to main standards, but they've met standards that were equivalent to the discharge guidelines that we are going to need to meet from Picket Mountain. Those types of responses are going to be coming up in the next sequence of responses for the Land Use Planning Commission. I think it's important to note, though, that once again, the legislation dictates that we cannot discharge water. So if we can't prove, or if we can't achieve that requirement, then there's not going to be any shovels in the ground. There's not going to be any sort of development that takes place on the project. So the legislation itself offers us a lot of confidence there.
No other hands? Go ahead, Sarah.
What becomes of all the infrastructure at the end of the life of the project?
Yeah, great question. So after everything is said and done, we've exploited the underground minerals, and we've sold the concentrates, and we've stored the tailings. Then we basically, the idea is, quick answer is, we put the site the way it looks today. So we recontour the project, we plug the holes. Now there's been some requests that any openings to underground be designed with a bulkhead that supports bat habitat and stuff like that. We're working with groups very diligently on ensuring that we can support that if they're reasonably achievable. Buildings, generally, assets within buildings, they get sold to other projects. The buildings themselves, if they're in good shape, they can get sold. Foundations get broken up and tested, and if they test to be inert, then we would generally store those underground in the facility because they're inert material. They're basically rocks. If they're proven, or if they're tested and they come back to be basically just debris, then we would end up collecting those and disposing them in a appropriately licensed facility to handle disposal of demolition debris. We recontour everything back to, I guess, today's topography, and then we would end up remulching and reseeding everything so that a similar type of forest product would end up growing in that area. I did mention that the rezoning area is around 528 acres. The actual impacted area is around 130 acres. So, I guess I just wanted to make that clarity, because we're looking at around 25% of what we're looking at rezoning.
Any other hands? Any other questions? So, hearing, go ahead.
I have one quick question. I just thought of something else. So I believe, if I'm not mistaken, to the east from the site is the upper regions of the Mattawamkeag River watershed. I think it's the West Branch, perhaps.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And I believe that that's been designated, that whole area has been designated as a critical habitat, which is a legal term under the Endangered Species Act. I'm wondering, and that would bring in federal fisheries agencies, I think. Have you reached out to the federal fisheries agencies to see what kind of issues permitting would be required, since it is critical habitat under the Endangered Species Act for Atlantic salmon? Thanks.
Yeah, great question. I have reached, and so obviously through the Land Use Planning Commission process, the petition submission, we've been working at a state level, certainly with IF&W on species habitats, plant habitats, etc. what we've also been able to do is communicate with the Army Corps of Engineers. So I have had discussions with the Army Corps of Engineers. I've brought them through from A to Z, our conceptual design. They've had some very good questions around, what and when and how. And so we've had thorough discussions around the project. Ultimately, the response that I got out of them is that if there's a requirement for their involvement, they would end up getting involved in the mine permitting review under the DEP. So, but ultimately, I guess where there's sort of zero impact to wetlands on the property based on the conceptual design today, and the design is such that there's no impact to any surface receiving bodies of water or groundwaters, that they wouldn't have to, I guess, exclusively be interested in the project.
Has NOAA Fisheries made that determination, Jeremy, or is that the company's determination at this point?
So the determination of which, sorry, of
not needing to consult with the federal fisheries agencies. I thought that's what you just said.
Yeah,
so you said since there's no impact to surface waters that you wouldn't see a need for having to work with either the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service or NOAA Fisheries, who are the two federal agencies that I understand that administer the Endangered Species Act in Maine.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just to clarify that, there's certainly consultation with any, state and federal agencies. And I thought that's, I guess to clarify, is I've reached out to the federal agencies and communicated the project, and they've indicated to me when they would get involved, but the unlikelihood that they would get involved because of the state of the design of the project.
Bert, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it was basically similar to what John was just saying, but you just mentioned you reached out to the federal agencies, but when you were talking just a little while ago, it was the Army Corps of Engineers. I can see where the Army Corps of Engineers can get involved, but that still doesn't say anything about the federal fisheries agencies. And I think your answer to John just now still didn't cover that. You mentioned federal agencies, but it would be good to know which agencies.
Okay. Yeah. So I guess what I can do is I can certainly add to our communications, like a letter or request a letter of communications, I suppose, from the fisheries agencies and the EPA or the Army Corps of Engineers, et cetera. It sounds like that would be helpful. Yeah.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, Jeremy, as you described this, you said there was a rezoning process and then a permitting process.
Correct. Yeah.
And at what point do you have to start making sure that there's no significant impact on wildlife or fisheries or those things? Is that all part of the rezoning process, or does that come in when you do the permitting? I'm wondering if some of these agencies that you might need to consult with will be during the permitting process as opposed to the rezoning process, which I understand is a process that determines whether or not that type of use will fit harmoniously within that environment.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So the rezoning process is to make sure that it's a reasonable fit. There is a significant, since this is the first project of its kind under the new legislation, this is really the first kick at the can of operating under the new legislation under Chapter 200. Before the Land Use Planning Commission is willing to make any determination on the project, they are really looking for, I guess, a fairly clear knowledge of what the DEP is ultimately going to be looking for in detail under the mine permitting phase of the project. So it is sequential. So we're running through sort of the rezoning process right now. And I think it's important to note too that we're not able to apply for a mining permit under the DEP and get all of the details around fisheries and get all of the details around, you know, there's a series of soils evaluations that need to take place, wetlands evaluations that need to take place, studying all of the flora, fauna, and everything surrounding the project. That can't happen until, you know, the rezoning has been completed, and then we're allowed to apply for a mining permit with the DEP.
Okay, so we're running out of time, and I definitely want to give Mr. Bennett some time. Thank you, Jeremy. I think that there are some concerns, things that came to mind, like, did you approach the tribes? Have you talked to the tribes other than through MITSC? I know Teresa Secord was quoted in a couple articles, so I don't know if your agency did or the news media did. So I think this bears further discussion, but Mr. Bennett, please go ahead.
Paul, can I just I guess at this point, I would just ask Jeremy, we have a YouTube audio stream. I think I shared that with you. It's at MITSC at our website. If you could drop off the Zoom at this point, if you want to, you can obviously listen to the public audio stream. Thanks a lot.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, Paul. I didn't know how to do that.
Well, I mean, I just wanted to be fair because it was a timing thing, and I didn't expect a head-to-head, and I apologize to Nick if that was awkward. But so, Nick, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. My name is Nick Bennett. I'm the staff scientist for the Natural Resources Council of Maine. And I didn't expect a head-to-head either, so it's good you folks are keeping me on my toes. I want to just say thank you very much for inviting me to speak to you. Thanks to both Paul and John for inviting me along. I'm wondering if it's possible that I can share a few slides, and then I do have some other comments I'd like to make about Wolf Den and about some of the things that Jeremy said to you earlier, which I don't think are true, quite honestly. So,
so Paul, I can go ahead and make Jeremy, Nick a co-host.
Yeah, you've become a master at this, Paul Tebow. Just so everybody knows, from this point, we're going to be called Paul Squared. You're addressing both of us. Go ahead, Nick.
Thank you. All right, let's see if I can do this. Is that visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. Okay. So one of the things, well, I'll start a little bit back further. I first got involved in issues having to do with mining in Maine in 2012, when the LePage administration pushed through a bill that gutted Maine's 1991 mining rules and attempted to put out the red carpet for the mining industry in Maine, largely at the request of J.D. Irving, who wanted to mine Bald Mountain, which is one of the largest metal deposits in Maine that we know about. Unfortunately, that bill passed. It sparked a 5-year battle in the legislature over mining laws and rules. Both the Penobscot Nation and the Halton Band of Maliseets played a significant role in the law that eventually passed, sponsored by Brownie Carson in 2017, which was the strictest mining law in the country, and in backing the rules that were also passed as a result of that law, which is the Chapter 200 rules. So we were very pleased with how all of that turned out. We were surprised when about 6 months after all of that happened, Wolf Den showed up. and propose building a mine in a place where we would never want to see a mine built, in the shadow of Mount Katahdin, right next to Baxter State Park, at the headwaters of the West Branch of the Mattawamkeag and eventually the Penobscot, and next to a number of state heritage brook trout fishing waters. This is a spectacularly beautiful area, and I've spent some time up there and bird hunting and hiking, and this is not a place I want to see a mine go in. This is a picture of Pleasant Lake, which is one of the lakes that is near the proposed mine site. Just to give you a sense of where the mine is or would be, here's the Picket Mountain Project. Here's the Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument, Baxter State Park over here. So you can see this is right smack in the middle of a pretty spectacular part of Maine. This is a more detailed map. Mud Lake, Pleasant Lake, and Grass Pond are all state heritage brook trout ponds. You would never know that from the way Wolf Den talks about this in their rezoning application. They said all the lakes in the area were described as shallow and warm in the summer with no potential for supporting cold water fish. Pleasant Lake, Mud Lake, and Picket Mountain Pond are all, as I said, state heritage brook trout waters. This is some of the best brook trout fishing in Maine that's relatively easily accessible to members of the public. Again, beautiful place. That's Picket Mountain and Picket Mountain Pond. Here's just another look: Pleasant Lake, Mount Chase, Mount Katahdin. And this is a view from the top of Mount Chase. There's Upper and Lower Shin Pond in the background. Obviously, those are two areas with a great deal of recreational significance for the state. Why do we worry about mining? We worry about mining of this type: metal mining, metallic mineral mining, sulfide mining, hard rock mining, all the same things, because the type of ore that Wolf Den would be mining is reactive. It contains high levels of sulfur. And when you dig up this ore, which is protected by lots of rock and soil from air and water, if you dig it up and expose it to air and water, it generates acid. And the acid alone is enough to kill fish that are sensitive to that, which include brook trout, salmon, landlocked salmon. Cold water species are especially sensitive to low pH. And it also liberates toxic metals that co-occur with the metals that they're interested in getting. In Maine in particular, we often find arsenic in these types of deposits in high levels, and lead. Those things leach out of the ore when it's exposed to air and water, and acid is generated. This is a gulch in Montana called Swift Gulch. This is actually very near some tribal lands in Montana. The orange color is iron, but that's should be a clear stream, and it isn't because it's acidic, and the acid causes the iron to leach out of the ore, as well as other toxic heavy metals. If you look at Wolf Den's website, it's pretty darn slick. And they say this project is the highest grade undeveloped VMS deposit in America, which is volcanic massive sulfides. NRCM hired an expert consultant from an organization out west called the Center for Science in Public Participation, that helps groups like ours when we're trying to confront the mining industry and often its very misleading claims. They said that the grade of ore that Wolf Den has are in the lowest two possible grades. So right now, they don't have enough information to tell you this is the highest grade undeveloped VMS deposit in America, but it doesn't stop them from telling you that. Also, here's a statement from an article in the Bangor Daily News, which says, Wolf Den's most recently available quarterly financial statements from September 2019 show the company incurring a net loss of $1.4 million and accumulating a deficit of over $32 million. It also shows that for its USA subsidiary, which oversees the Pickett Mountain project, Wolf Den's operating activities were at a loss of $580,000 for the last 6 months prior to the September 2019 statement. And an older article from the Portland Press Herald says Wolf Den is a mineral exploration company with interests in Manitoba and northern New Brunswick. Corporate filings show the company has yet to move from exploration to actual mining at any of the sites. The most recent quarter report stated that Wolf Den has lost more than $17 million since 2009, including more than $800,000 during the first 2 quarters of 2017. I'm going to skip that and just show you one more picture, but I'm really going to try to focus in my last couple of minutes, assuming I have a couple more minutes left. Let me stop sharing my screen. Let's see. How can I do this?
Just close it.
Close it. Great. My last couple of minutes, I just want to focus on water quality. Jeremy said to you, and he said this to many other people, that this is a mine that will have no impacts on water. There isn't a mine in the world that has no impacts on water of this type. I don't know what he's talking about, but they have been saying that they will treat their wastewater to natural background levels of groundwater since the beginning, since they're coming here. We met with them in February of 2020, right before the pandemic hit. And I asked Jeremy for an example of a mine that could treat its wastewater to background levels. And the example he gave me was the Half Mile Mine in New Brunswick. The only problem is, first of all, we don't have enough data on the Half Mile Mine to actually verify that what he's saying is even true for that mine. But even more importantly, that mine doesn't have ore processing. So it just generates ore and ships it off site for processing. And it's the processing of ore that's the most dangerous and dirty part of a mining operation. And they are proposing to put in an ore processing plant at this site. And so Jeremy was telling me and the Land Use Planning Commission that the Half Mile Mine is an example of a mine that can treat its wastewater to background levels, but it's not even a comparable mine. And so in February, the Land Use Planning Commission wrote a very skeptical letter to Wolf Den with a bunch of questions in it that Wolf Den was supposed to respond to by the beginning of April. It's now more than halfway through May, and we have not seen any response from them. But I just want to read a couple of the things that the Land Use Planning Commission said about this. They said, given the change in the water management plan, with some wastewater from the concentrator tailings management facility being treated in the wastewater treatment plant and released to the environment, it appears that the wastewater treatment plant for the Half Mile Mine is not a good comparison because the Half Mile Mine is not concentrated mineral resources on site. And it is our understanding that the mine only operated on a trial basis and is not operated since 2012. Please provide performance data from an existing operating wastewater treatment plant, similar to the one proposed for Pickett Mountain, or other credible evidence that demonstrates that wastewater from the proposed process can be treated to achieve background levels. And so they share our skepticism about this. they are also proposing to build these sort of disposal units, which they haven't really described yet, where they're going to pump their treated wastewater and have it percolate into groundwater. The only problem is in places where they've proposed to put these things that there's only 2 feet of soil. And so basically they would be disposing of this wastewater in bedrock, and to dig these disposal units deep enough, they're going to have to blast. And so then you have fractured bedrock, and you have no treatment of any of the discharge water. You just have it going right into the fractures. And in Maine, as I think everybody here probably knows, groundwater and surface water are very closely connected. This is not like the arid West, where you have groundwater that's in confined aquifers with recharge times of thousands of years. Maine has recharge times of a decade or so. Groundwater and surface water are very connected. So, LUPC also said to Wolf Den, please provide a response to MDEP comments, particularly sections G and H regarding water treatment. In that response, demonstrate that it is possible to discharge wastewater on site, either in subsurface treatment units as currently proposed, or using other available technology in a manner that would not result in the functional equivalent of a direct discharge to surface waters. Additional information may be required, including more detailed information on soil type, depth to bedrock, distance to nearest surface water bodies, and discharge volume. So I guess what I'm saying is that the Land Use Planning Commission staff is extremely skeptical that Wolf Den can comply with any of the claims that it's making about zero discharge or no impact discharge. We are also skeptical of that. And we strongly oppose the Land Use Planning Commission giving a rezoning to Wolf Den. I would add just quickly in closing that over the past couple of months, I've had the misfortune of being shown some videos that Wolf Den is showing to its investors to try to sell this mine. And among other things that it makes claims about, some of which are really outrageous in these videos, they make a statement that one of the things that makes a great place to Maine a great place to mine is that there are no indigenous rights here. And that means it's much easier to mine in Maine than, for example, in Canada. And I'd be happy to share with the commission that video. I would have shared it today had I known that you were going to be getting, the pitch from Wolf Den too. But I'll happily share that with you after we get off the line. But I think it's a pretty shocking statement to hear from this company, that they're going to be putting a mine in places that are so important to Maine tribes, that are sacred ground to Maine tribes, that are near critical habitat for Atlantic salmon. And at the same time, they're trying to sell this project to investors as being easy to permit because of the lack of indigenous rights in Maine. So I'll just stop there.
Okay, Paul, I think we've lost quorum. I'm looking at the people that had to drop off.
I think we have 7 of us all together. That's including you, Paul. I think that's just barely enough. But yeah, I think before
Paul's
we leave,
on mute.
I'd like to say thank you, Nick. You gave us some good information. And I think at this point, I would probably need to make the motion. I think Paul Tebow may need to say something, but I'm going to go ahead and make the motion so it's there to end our meeting.
Well, if I could, I was just going to say, I know you have lost the quorum. It doesn't prevent you from carrying on a conversation with Nick. I want to make the comment that the video that you mentioned, the Wolf Den video that makes the comment about indigenous rights, I'm assuming everyone on this commission would like to have that.
Yep.
Yes. Yep.
So Nick, one, thank you very much. And I apologize that we didn't have more time.
No
I'm sorry
problem.
that we lost the quorum. I was trying to get you, and you actually were doing it as I was typing it. Was the heavy metal pollution? Why am I double echoing? The heavy metal pollution and that acid mine drain off and what it does, the toxicity, what it does to fishing. My wife's family owns land in Mount Chase, and I didn't really understand where it was being talked about, but now I do. There's some incredible trout fishing waters up there. So if they're talking anywhere around there, I'd be in opposition. And the downstream of the Penobscots and the Maliseets, could that affect their lands? But now they're talking about drilling here in Calais. So I'm even more in opposition for a company that has no track record.
Right.
Now they want to come poison our waters. I'm of Bert's same mindset. I wanted to oppose this back in November when I first saw the very first Wolfton article in Bangor Daily, and I didn't know how to get it on the agenda. But thank you, Nick. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, I would have a broader question. Is there any place in Maine where mining could be done responsibly without environmental damage, or is there any type of mining that could be done?
So that's a really good question and a really hard one to answer. Mining is an activity that's necessary for us to all be using computers, et cetera. But Maine in general, based on what we know about Maine, has some significant problems. First of all, our mining deposits in general, our metal deposits aren't that good. They're small and they're not of that high quality. And Maine and they tend to be very high in sulfur, which means that acid mine drainage reaction that I was talking about is very likely to happen here. The other thing about Maine is that it rains a lot, this spring notwithstanding. And that also makes it difficult to mine, as does snow. And so, if you're talking about a hard environment to mine in, Maine is one that's very hard. I don't think there's any possibility of base metal mining, mining for zinc, mining for copper, without significant environmental impacts. And that doesn't mean that, mining should be banned everywhere. But I think the mining industry doesn't do itself any favors by not telling the truth about what the likely environmental impacts of their operations are going to be. And they make a lot of rosy promises, and then they leave people with a lot of messes to clean up afterwards. Maine's experience with large metal mines or industrial metal mines is really bad. We've had two of them in the modern era. Both started around 1970. Both went bankrupt. The owners disappeared. For one of those sites, the state was able to track down the owner and make them pay to cap the site and stop some of the pollution. And the other site, which closed in 1972, Maine taxpayers are still paying to clean up. So that's almost 50 years.
What are those sites?
One of them is called the Black Hawk Mine, and the other's called the Callahan Mine. The Black Hawk Mine was in Blue Hill, and the Callahan Mine is in Brooksville.
So at this point, Paul, do we need the live stream?
If you're, it's not an official meeting because you don't have a quorum. So
that's what I'm saying.
But
if we're meeting,
continuing the conversation. Go ahead, Sarah.
Well, if we're a group meeting, we don't have a quorum, so we can't make motions and vote on anything. Right. But should the public still be able to hear anything that we talk about? I don't know. That's a question.
Paul. Well, I mean, I don't know that we've had this situation before, but I I guess I'm not seeing a particular reason why you have to cut off the public stream. As long
Okay,
as
that was my question.
as long as it's understood that you've lost quorum and that
Right.
the commission can't take any formal actions at this point.
Right. I think it's an interesting conversation, and I like Sarah's questions. I did know about the Blue Hill one. And again, this is just, when I first became the MITSC chair, one of the first things I ran into was this particular Wolfton getting the process going on Katahdin area. And I reached out to, it was one of the tribal reps and said, hey, have you seen this? Do you guys want to oppose this? Like, this is significant. And the fact that they can make all these claims having, and John, I wish he was still on here, having never had a successful mining operation is problematic. You can say you've got the best people in the world and you can do X, Y, and Z and you can wave a abracadabra, but if you've never done it, you don't know, you've never done it. You don't have that success story. So in our state, Bert said it earlier, and I'm going to use your words, Bert, and nothing personal, Sarah, but I think the natives, we have a particular connection to this land, and we treat the entire entity from the earth to the trees, to the water, to the animals. It's part of our connection to this location. I don't care what you're doing. If you're jeopardizing that, I don't want you doing it. We've already dealt with that with pollution from paper mills, and oh, this discharge is not going to matter. And we're still dealing with the acid. We can't eat porpoise from our bay. We can only eat fish meals twice a year. It's ridiculous. And then to have something like this, and I know it's the money making economic platform. It just makes me sick that it's even being entertained. Go ahead, Sarah. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just asking questions because I'm curious to learn about mining in general, and I realize that Maine is different from other parts of the country, and I don't have any position on it, and I recognize that the environment is very delicate, and things that we do in my industry, the forest products industry, we've learned to take care of the waters to protect them from logging impact. And I think, anything else that's done in the state needs to be done with the same care.
Absolutely. In my dad's generation of logging, and he'll even talk about it, they used to take a dozer and go across a prime trout stream to go get logs on the other side, thought nothing of it.
Yeah.
Killed all the brook trout downstream, not knowing they were doing that.
Right.
It changes the dynamic, and your industry has come a huge
It has.
way
We've learned
above.
a lot.
Oh yeah. So I'm sorry, Nick, go ahead.
No, that's okay. This is very interesting.
Would I ever say something real quick, Paul?
Go for it, Sam.
I just want to say if you wanted sort of a peek into the future, I think not too long ago, just across the border north of Fredericton was this mine called the Sisson Mine, and it was within the St. John watershed, not within our Meduxingay watershed, but we were privy to a lot of the presentations and all the proposals that were made, and some of the proposals made by Wolfton almost sounded word for word of what this mining company said. And they, we had concerns about tailing ponds and the record of tailing ponds and other similar mining operations leaking, and the area or whoever owned the land was assured that wasn't going to be a problem, and everything was good. They were doing everything they could, and it was in a less remote area than this proposed mine near Mount Chase. But now they're finding that they're having problems like that too, with washouts and the sulfur acid reaction, and they threw out a lot of the same wording and verbiage that Wolfton Mine did, and the same assurance, and they were in a few years quickly proven wrong. I can find some of those articles if you want to read them.
That'd be awesome. Go ahead, Zeke.
Well, first off, Nick, thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's very
Sure,
important.
thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
So I also remember the system mind discussions at the time I was working in consultation with the Wolastoqey Nation, New Brunswick, and we had to sit through a lot of these type of presentations, and yes, it seems very familiar. But one of the things that one of the key differences is the nature of consultation. So one of my questions I had throughout the entire process he was speaking was, is this the Wolfden's obligation for consultation satisfied here? I know they don't have a legal obligation, but is this what they consider to be consultation? Is it with MITSC, or are these letters also being sent out to our natural resources departments as well?
Go ahead, Bart.
You know, they might not, as far as my thought on it is that they may not have, the company may not have requirement for consultation with the native nations. However, state does. See, so and if they're approaching these state departments, I would think that the state departments, appropriate departments would be required to consult with the tribes.
They won't be able to get a permit from the Land Use Planning Commission without consultation of the tribes. I'm sure of that.
Absolutely.
Part of consultation is also accommodation. So
right.
If something like this would come about, then it would have to be combined with some type of accommodation package. If we're talking Canadian law, at least. But
yeah, so
I think that's.
Go ahead, Nick.
Oh, sorry. I think that's what they're getting at in their investor videos, is that under Canadian law, that they would be required to make some kind of compensation to First Nations.
Right.
But they were saying in Maine, we don't have to do that because there aren't any Indigenous rights. That's what they're selling to investors.
Wow. Yeah, we need to see that.
Yeah, I'd like to send you a bunch of things if that's okay.
I have no problem with that.
Should I send them to Paul?
Yep.
Okay.
If we just had the link to the Wolfenden site, which I believe we already have, I think we can find a lot of those things on there. I read that. I went through the Wolfenden site before this meeting, and I was surprised at some of their language and the way they just sort of brushed off things. And even in their statement about what their company was all about, I think it was the second sentence was, we make money for our investors. And there really wasn't much emphasis on trying to do things responsibly to provide products for people, but at the same time protect the land and all that type of stuff that I would have expected from an ethical company, I guess I would say.
I was surprised by that.
Thanks,
too.
Sam.
Their website, and I was surprised why they just opened right up with talking about their investors. It was surprising.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
I mean, so
almost like the
and I'll say, one thing that I have a problem with, and being that I've been around for a minute and listened to a lot of different presentations, when they come in with something that just sounds so good, that too good to be true, and look, we're only going to make $500 million. The other $500 million is going to stay with you guys, and it'll be totally natural when we leave. I smell BS on that, and that's just me. If they came in with a 25% profit, okay, and we're going to spend this much money to ensure that we, have containment, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. But if you're showing $500 million profit, are you really concerned about us, the landowners? No. And that's my personal opinion. But I do have to go. Sam just said that he's getting locked in or locked up. I couldn't tell.
I've got to get off too. I've got another commitment, but I think this has been a good discussion. And even though it may have been a little bit awkward, I think it was good to hear both sides. So
I too.
Well, thank you again for having me, and I will
Thank you,
send,
Nick.
when we get off the Zoom, I'll send Paul maybe a few documents that are relevant from the LUPC process, and I'll also send a link to that video.
Perfect.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay,
Thank you,
thank you so
everybody.
much,
Thanks,
everybody.
everyone.
Have a
Bye,
good
Joe.
evening.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
A good one.
Bye-bye.